Kia ora koutou. It is great to have you here today. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Before we get this underway, I'm just going to pass over to Sara, who is going to open this week. Sara, over to you.
Thanks, Liam. We were all noticing before that we're feeling our nerves and our excitement bubbling in us. And so I'd like to invite those watching who might have been finishing their workday, just landing, to join us in just a little focusing moment. So it might be that you'd like to shift in your chairs. I'm quite short, so I often find I need to scoot forward and put my feet on the floor. And you might find some people like to close their eyes. I'm not sure if people are listening while driving, so please don't close your eyes if you're driving. Others may you might like to soften your gaze, like looking down towards the floor, just at something neutral. And you might find it helps to place your hands like on your lap and have a little contact with the warmth of your body. We're going to take a slow, deep inhale, a breath in through our noses. See if you can fill up as much as possible. And when you're ready, see if you can let it go slowly, like a balloon deflating. I'm just going to repeat that a few times, just noticing how it feels to breathe in, filling up your lungs, and then letting that go. And repeating that again. Nice. And I call these turtle breaths. I'm going to ask you to bring your turtle shell, your shoulders right up towards your ears like you're hiding. And when you're ready, you're going to drop them down. Nice. I'm going to do that 2 more times, and you can add breath with it if you like. And if you feel silly, awesome. Let it happen. Breathe in, shoulders up, hide in your turtle shell. When you're ready, let it go. Great. Let's do one more. Awesome. And we're going to open with a karakia. So if you'd like to keep your eyes closed for that, to connect with it, awesome. Tukua te wairua kia rere ki ngā taumata. Hai arahi I a tātou mahi. Me te tātou whainga tikanga a rātou mā. Kia mau, kia ita, kia kōrai ngā naro, kia pupuri, kia whakamaua, kia tīna, hui e tai.
Kia ora, Sara. Thank you for opening up this hui with some breathing and a karakia. It is such a cool time to be involved because we are at the very beginning of our journey to the renewal of the next round of collective agreements. We're going to be talking a little bit more at the end of this around the upcoming paid union meetings. But I think what is clear is that there's going to be a real key drive there around workload and wellbeing. And I guess that's why it is really important that we are all here today. Because today we launched the report for teachers and principals. This is either the 4th or 5th year that we have had these reports. I don't think anybody on this call is going to be caught off guard by the results because we feel it and we live it every day. And so over the next 45 minutes, we're just going to be unpacking some of that. And to help me do that, I am delighted that we've got Kahli here. If you were watching breakfast this morning, you may have seen her talking with the presenters around wellbeing and with our very own Carl. And we've also got Sara here. Sara, can I start with you and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Kia ora. I'm Sara. I hail from the Hutt Valley, Upper Hutt to be precise. I have 3 children. 2 of them are fur children. They're cats. They count. And then my partner has a 6-year-old daughter, so I'm a co-parent. And there's so much I could speak to. So I suppose I should say that in my daily life, the work I do, I lead the Yoga for Schools program, a program co-created with the Hutt City Council and Hutt Valley Schools, particularly Avalon Intermediate. And so what we do is we use yoga as a context for speaking about social and emotional learning in the classroom. How does it feel to move into this posture? What does my brain do when I move into this posture? What am I thinking about myself? What does my breath do? And how does that affect how I navigate the world?
Thank you very much for being here. And the leadership role that you play in Te Riu Roa.
So, kia ora everybody, I'm Kahli. I am currently a teacher at Gladstone Primary School. I have 28 lovely little 7 and 8 year olds that I wrangle every single day. I kind of fell into this leadership role, to be honest, with NZEI. I think once you put your hand up and you realise how passionate people are in NZEI, I became that really, really quickly. I believe in passionate educators. I am excited to be part of the next campaign, but also being part of Kua Tai Te Wā was an eye-opening experience. I got pushed out of my comfort zone like you would never believe. I would never have thought there would have been 10,000 people in Aotea Square and I would have been speaking to them. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster, but I'm really I feel really privileged to be here. I've had some amazing experiences being part of the union. And this year I've been lucky enough to be interviewed by the Puaotonga review panel, which is our independent review. It was really intense, but I hope those results are going to come out and paint a picture of what we're actually up against. And it's exciting times, and I am really jazzed up about what's going to happen next.
Cool. Awesome. And again, thank you both for being here. Sara, can we start with you, because you have done research into the area of whole order and wellbeing. What have you found, and I guess what was most surprising about what you found?
Sure, I just realised that because I was so nervous and not wanting to take up too much time, I didn't even give you context about why I'm here.
Let's start there then.
Of course, yeah, so let's start there. So I trained as a school teacher. I did the Diploma of Primary Teaching at Vic. So shout out to all my other Victoria University trainees there. And I went into the classroom and came out of the classroom very quickly because I burnt out. And I was on mental health leave. And I was like, why did that happen? You know, I've got these skill sets. I'd been teaching yoga for about 4 years at that point. So I knew how to look after myself. I had, you know, these competencies, but something happened. What was that? And I'm one of those people where I'm like, I must know. So I went back to Vic again because apparently I love education. And my thesis was exploring this burnout thing within primary teaching specifically. So what I did was, first of all, dove into what burnout research is out there. There's a lot. Turns out it happens in most caring professions, including teaching, of course, which is a caring profession. And from that body of research, for those of you who know and don't know, we call it a literature review. I picked out what kept showing up the most. Yeah, so there were these 6 key things that kept showing up that people were exploring or noticing in teachers. And so I took those and used the instruments or the questionnaires and asked and put them to our kaiakoa teachers. And I was really fortunate that within 3 days, I had about 270 responses. So thank you actually to any of you who were those people. Now I've forgotten what you asked me.
So within your research, what kind of caught you by surprise?
Repeat the question, that'd be great. Oh, yeah, well, so one of the things I explored was this notion of emotional intelligence. So I went in with the hypothesis that teachers with more competencies in this emotional intelligence would have less burnout, but there was no relationship at all between emotional intelligence and burnout. Yeah, I see by Kahli's face, she's like, wait, what? Yeah, there wasn't a correlation. I mean, in my research, which was really surprising to me. The second thing that I did find really surprising in my findings was, so we do this thing called emotional labor that I know, Liam, you'd like me to speak to a bit later on. So this thing that teachers do was the greatest contributor to their experience of the emotional exhaustion of teaching, but it was also the greatest contributor to their sense of accomplishment as a teacher. So that was really surprising to me, that this thing that we do both contributes to a decrease in burnout, but an increase in another dimension of burnout. So interesting. And then the last one, which I was saying to you guys just before we logged on, that I found very surprising, and even as it's surprising to me now as I want to share it, I can feel the swirl in my tummy of nerves to share. Is I asked the question, what role do you think spirituality plays in education? And the response was often surprise, like, oh, wasn't expecting that question. Or do you mean religion? Or do you mean, like, what do you mean? And I found that really interesting, particularly because our curriculum is built on this Te Whare Tapawha model with taha wairua as a side, as a wall. And yet the conversation, I felt so vulnerable in asking it. So that was really surprising to me as well.
I think there's a lot that you've just shared there that classroom teachers will be sitting there thinking, oh, yep, I connect to that. I connect to that. Kahli, you're in the classroom. Can you talk to us a little bit around why teacher wellbeing is important, and particularly the impacts that it has on tamariki?
Look, I think a stress teacher is not a teacher that can do their job or to do justice to our children. A stress teacher is the one that's running around and finding everything overwhelming, and therefore one thing goes wrong and it's a waterfall effect. Things just keep spiraling. So I think it's really important, as teachers who have been teaching for a long time like me, I think it's really important to be able to see that in our staff, because obviously lots of times our younger staff can't actually see that in themselves. So as a mentor and as a team leader and all those hats that we wear as experienced teachers, I think we look out for our team members and we make sure that they're okay before we look after ourselves. And I know our principals do the same thing. But I always have that kind of saying, a not well teacher is not a well teacher. Therefore, they're not an effective teacher. Therefore, they cannot do their job adequately because they're always running to keep up. You can never get, and I mean, teaching is that moving mountain all the time. But I think, now it's a time to stop and actually pause. And I know a lot of us did that reflection last year with COVID and our lockdowns, and we all said we're going to work smarter and, we're not going to work as hard. But I think we've got to stop and do that again because, stress and not looking after ourselves is something that we don't do very well as teachers because we're always looking after each other. We just put Band-Aids on. I'll just take a Panadol. I'll be fine. I'm just going to go to the pharmacy. I heard someone say yesterday, I'm just going to go to the pharmacy and get some Sudafed instead of going to the doctor, because if I go to the doctor in Auckland, they're going to give me a COVID test, which means I have to have 2 days off school and I have to isolate, which impacts on this, and this. And then they might not have a reliever, so then you guys would get more kids in your class. So it's that compounding nature of stress and well-being that can become really all-encompassing. And Sarah, I would love to know more, and I would love to get more in touch with my spirituality and my wairua to get myself in balance. Because at the moment, and I know I'm not speaking for just myself, I'm speaking for a multitude of people, my well-being, my balance is like this.
It's interesting you say we find it hard to pause, because if we think about what pausing is paying attention to me, and and all the things that we think of as pausing, going out into nature, is that not practicing spirituality? Isn't that interesting?
And I think, I think one of the things that resonated with me with what you said was this idea of well-being and hauora. Often we know that it is about the individual needing to take care of it, but actually that exists within a system. And we know that there are some changes that we need to see at the system level to create the environment for people to have a positive sense of well-being. And I think that's one of those things that came through really strongly through Puautanga. You referenced it earlier, Kahli, because submission after submission, we heard the call for more teachers, more teacher aides, more specialist help, because we get the connection between people having a work-life balance and people having positive well-being. And so as we move into the campaign, that collective action is going to become really important, because we are asking the government to make a significant but vital investment in public education in the primary sector. That's going to be important. But Sara, can I pass over to you to maybe talk about, alongside that bigger picture that we do have to shift, what are some of the things that people can be doing to take care of themselves?
Thank you for that question, Liam. Just following some of my own advice, which is really hard to do, and taking a moment to pause and breathe. Well, this emotional labour thing that I learned about was really interesting for me. So my partner is a sparky. He installs heat pumps. And so he might take the day and he'll carry, say, a full heat pump up 6 flights of stairs. And then he'll get home at night. And it's perfectly okay for him to lie there on the couch completely knackered, because he's expended a lot of energy. We can acknowledge that. We can also see 2 heat pumps installed up 6 flights of stairs. So we're like, oh yeah, task is done, tick, good job, you may have your rest. This notion of emotional labor is a job that requires you to manage your emotions, which is teaching in a nutshell. Please sit down. I can hear that you're frustrated, but I need to speak to blah, blah. I will come over to you in just a moment. So in exploring that, I was like, oh, what is that? It's actually a biological function that we're doing in our brain. So we're trying to stay in this front part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is where all the good stuff happens, our excellent teaching, our problem solving. You're not getting it, so I'm going to meet you there. Every time we do that, we're expending a little bit of energy, and it's finite. It's actually like, I know a lot of teachers out there will know Minecraft. Yeah, Minecraft. Or video games, they have this energy bar across their head, and every time you get hit or knocked, you lose a little bit of that energy. Yeah, Kahli, I see you. Yeah, I think his name's Steve. I don't know. You lose that little bit of energy. Every single time a teacher is navigating a frustrating situation, they're losing a little bit of their energy bar. But the thing is, we don't have something to see that we've achieved with that expanding of energy. So we get home at the end of our workday, lie down on the couch and just want to chuck on Netflix. But the narrative inside our head is, oh, I must just be really lazy, or what's wrong with me? Why can't I get up and go to the gym right now? And I have to, because that'll give me more energy. But it's like, actually, let's be kind to ourselves that we've just done a heck load of labor. It's not manual labor, it's emotional labor. And we're tired and we've expended all of that. And so this pause, this kindness, this taking a deep breath, doing something just because it's fun is really difficult. A friend of mine was helping me prepare for this, and she goes, get rid of all the science, all the fancy academic words, and distill down what was the premise of your thesis, really? And if I think it's stop trying to be perfect and ask for more help. Yeah. 2 really, really hard things.
Yeah, Kahli, can I pass it over to you? That whole idea of asking for help. Why is it that we find that hard?
I think we don't want to admit that we can't do it all. And if we admit that we can't do it all, then we're letting our kids down. And in the back of our minds, it's always sitting, you know, if I have that day off, I haven't seen that reading group, I haven't got that writing book marked, you know, what if I'm going to let my parents down if I haven't got that organized? Or there's this emotional burden that teachers wear as this like invisible cloak, I kind of see it as. And we have to learn to be able to unburden ourselves and ask for help, and we have to be able to share those conversations. So it was really interesting in our staff room today after my little TV interview this morning. There were people literally unburdening themselves upon me in multitudes, which was amazing. But it also had given them a space where they felt really safe to do that. And so I think in schools, you know, as leaders and leadership and bigger system sort of change, I think we need to find a space where teachers can say, actually, I can't do anymore. And I like I said, this one, we've got to learn to say no.
I mean, that really resonates with me. And reflecting back on that breakfast, if people haven't seen it, I suggest you do. That kind of importance of role models, being able to see other people asking for help creates that safe space for others. One thing I'm constantly struck by is that hypocritical nature of teachers, because actually the advice we give to our students around ask for help, reach out when you need to. It's easier to solve an issue when it's small. Isn't really practice or behaviour that enough of us tend to follow through on.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're the worst to give out that we give all that advice out, but yet we don't take it on board. I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and I know teachers will resonate with this. You know, I haven't got time. I haven't got time to do this. I haven't got time to do it. When am I going to fit it into my day? Do I need to get up at 5 o'clock and go to the gym because all the statistics say I should be working out for 40 minutes a day? I don't have the energy. And I know there's lots of us out there. So that systematic change, I think, couldn't come any sooner, I
think. Sarah, is there anything else you want to add before we go through the questions?
Something I was just thinking about what Kahli was saying about the saying no, because it's so true. This word boundaries, you're like, oh, what does that mean? How do I do that? It feels so awful to say no because I'm letting someone down, or this child needs me. It's really tough, but there's a leadership coach, Bertha Aiko. She's a really interesting woman, and she said, we must claim the pauses because life will not give them to us. So how in my daily life, when I've not taken lunch again because I'm on duty again, how do I get there? Sorry, did I just push a button there?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not me. Wasn't me. I didn't do that. It's so hard. How do we do that? So it's, gosh, it's going to sound so trite and so irritating. And I can already feel teachers being like, oh. But the act of, I can feel my feet against the floor right here in this classroom. I can feel my chest lift and rise. I'm going to take a deep breath. And another one. Okay, I'm actually here in this moment. I'm pinning myself to the spot on this Google map right now here. Whoa, okay. I'm stopping. What is the most important thing to me to do right now? Oh, I haven't eaten all day and I'm running off caffeine. Right, I'm extra jittery here. Can I do something here to take a breath? Yeah, it's so simple and it's so irritating. But I really think, I have this image of like we all take a moment and you help each other do that. I see you taking a break there and I'm going to celebrate that for you instead of, I'm working really hard here. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, as I'm hearing you talking, I'm thinking about what was it like for me when I was in the classroom a couple of years ago, and you're constantly feeling like you've got all of these balls in the air, you've got reading groups, you're dealing with a little bit of behaviour on the side, but you're also thinking about where do you have to take the class next. And you wonder in those high stress moments, how well are your kids receiving you right now, and that actually just stopping and pausing and resetting creates space to ask that question around what's most important. I don't think I did a huge amount of it. Yeah.
It's really tricky. I wonder if I could just speak to one other thing. I know we have limited time and I don't want to take too much, but so there was something that kept coming up in the research, which is the teachers are saying, I know that I need to be teaching maths and English, but these children are coming in from lunch and I've got one under the desk and I've got this disagreement happening here. So I know I need to take the time to just navigate the social and emotional landscape of my classroom. But I'm scared that if I take that time, the leadership, the powers that be, whomever it is that we have imagined in our head that are watching us and are watching us, you know, I don't have anything to show for that time I just spent in a circle navigating everybody's feelings, because that's not valued and it's not measurable. But these children can't learn if I'm not taking the time to do the social and emotional stuff. And what was really interesting was, so there's an element of burnout called personal accomplishment, but I wanted to know more about that. So I looked at efficacy, which is the fancy word for self-esteem. But I separated or used an instrument that used 3 different parts for teacher self-esteem. Their pedagogical efficacy, or their belief they can teach the content well. That one related directly to burnout. It was a really strong relationship, but there was a really strong relationship to teachers' belief that they could manage behavior and social issues. And it was though, unless they were able to do that, they couldn't do the pedagogical stuff. And therefore, when they couldn't do the pedagogical stuff, they felt like a bad teacher, even though they weren't.
Yeah.
So what's happening there?
Yeah. So I'm going to move us through to some of these questions, because I think they do touch on a lot of the stuff that we have been speaking about. And so, Sarah, the first one is more directed at you. Through the research, did you see a differentiation between experienced teachers and beginning teachers?
The beginning teachers didn't have a strong capacity for that emotional labor stuff, so they got tired faster. The experienced teachers had built up the muscle, so they had a greater capacity to hold that. I can see you nodding away. Yeah. So that was really strong. But in regards to the teachers that I got to interview in depth, the burnout experience, the suffering experience was universal between beginning and experienced. Once the burnout hit, the suffering was universal.
There's another question that kind of links into the flip side of that, and it came from an NEN member who was at the Activist Hui last weekend, and they were talking about how is it that we avoid feeling bad as a beginning teacher if we aren't constantly busy. And so if we do find pockets where we've got time up our sleeve, and you look over at your experienced teachers that are run off their feet, how do you avoid not feeling bad that you're not working hard enough or you're not doing the right things because you're not slugging your guts out?
What a question. What an amazing question. Yes, let's...
I always have this piece of advice that I give to my beginning teachers. Don't ever try and do what I do. I am super busy, and I understand that. I wear multiple hats. I would never expect you to work the hours that that I work. It's not sustainable. It's not what I need you to do. I just need you. If you need to go home at 3:15, do it. Don't ever think that you have to not keep up, but do you know what I mean? Like I have a pace that is part of who I am. And I hope that many beginning teachers can understand that they never would need to look at that person who's been teaching for 20 years and think that they're being slack. It breaks my heart to think that beginning teachers think like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right, it's fine to go home or sit or listen or be or walk or, you know.
But I think the point that they're coming from is that while your advice is spot on, we actually don't do that. We don't live that very well, because there seems to be this kind of you need to be keeping up, you need to be as busy as everyone else, and it kind of feeds itself.
Right?
Yeah. I see it play out in the results from the survey around people getting red flags, and you can be in a circle of professionals, and it's almost like a badge of honor if you've got more red flags in your survey than other people, where those red flags are actually significant indicators that you need to be reaching out for help. But there's this feeling of kind of toughness about just being able to pick yourself up and carrying on. And then I guess that must get to a point, Sarah, where you can only do that for so long because the burnout hits.
Absolutely. And I think there's something to be questioned about the culture we exist in, which is what competence looks like. Mm-hmm. You know, and again, I'm harping on, but this self-awareness, this slowing down and going, who's benefiting by this idea that I need to keep going and keep going? And why do we have this culture of like, I can't do this yet, so I'm going to go out and learn more. And I can see where all my gaps are. I'm conscious to my incompetence. So I'm going to use all my spare time to study that and study that and study that. So you're never enough. It's never okay to just be like, I'm here in this moment right now. And I don't know that yet. And that's okay. Because am I in a culture that actually tells me it's okay to not know? We say it to the children, absolutely. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to make mistakes. But then, and I'm going to quote one of my teachers, not directly, but she said, as a beginning teacher, people say it's okay to make mistakes, but I'm basically in a year-long job interview. You know, I'm in they won't keep me if I make mistakes. So they're telling me that it's okay, but it doesn't feel that way. And I feel so uncomfortable saying this because I feel like I'm calling out the culture, but really what is a competent teacher? What do they look like? Are they Miss Honey from Matilda? Are they Mary Poppins? Because I think that was my impression of what a teacher had to be. They always look happy and they always have their stuff together. So if I'm not like that, I must be doing something wrong. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah. The next question here, I think it's one of those more practical things, but how do you find extra time in your class when you don't have the luxury of a teacher aide in there supporting you?
Oh, wow. I think what teachers need to be able to stand in their classroom and say is, if my kids need this, I can do that. And there's that, obviously, that system pressure and that you know, that, like you were talking about before, Sarah, that looking from above. If I know my kids have had a really rough time, you know, coming out of a lockdown, I know I'm going to need to go back to that class culture, back to, if I need to sit down and read with my kid who's reading on pink, I'm going to. And it's not the end of the world. And I try and practice what I preach in terms of spreading that as wide as I can. You know, we don't have to always be in a rush in the classroom, and I need to take that practice into my work-life balance, obviously. But, you know, I think as teachers, we need to stand in our profession and say, this is actually what I need to do in order to meet the needs of my kids. And schools and principals and our senior leadership, we need to support our teachers to be able to do that.
I have a question to that, Kahli, is do we treat teachers as professionals? Do we see them? Because pedagogy means the art and science of teaching. They are artists and scientists. They've studied this art, and yet are they thought of as professionals?
I would hope so. I think we've done a lot of work in the last space, Liam. I know Kua Tai Te Wā, we worked really hard on raising that awareness of that we are professionals and that we need to be, we are worth a lot and we have a really important job. So I think those discussions there are really important, and I think we have to keep saying, we are we are amazing and we are awesome at what we do. And hopefully then that's going to have a knock-on effect, right?
Actually, that question of are we professionals isn't one that I think we come back to enough. I mean, we get told that we are, but we often don't then take it a step further and align what's actually happening with is that characteristic of being a part of a profession. And so I think it's one that we need to be coming back to time and time again. A lot of the conversation that we've had so far is around hauora, wellbeing, burnout. One of the questions here is there any connection between that and depression and anxiety? Are they all part of the same thing, or are they specifically different?
I'm sorry, would you be willing to ask that question again?
Yeah, so we've been talking about hauora and wellbeing and burnout. Is there a direct connection between that and depression and anxiety, or are they just separate things?
This would be my opinion, which is built upon the research that I did, which is still seen through my lens, right? So I would say yes. So I just want to mention that part of my research was not just the questionnaire, but I interviewed in detail 15 teachers. And many of them were speaking to, and myself included, went on medication for both anxiety and depression. Yeah, because if you think about depression, it's a hopelessness. And anxiety is a constant fear of the future, or of not being able to meet your needs or the needs of those around you. So, yeah, burnout can be both. Yeah. I mean, many of these teachers were incredibly depressed and anxious.
There was a lot of in the research, Liam, that's just come out. There were direct links to hours of work and relating to depression, heart disease, weight gain, and something else I read. I can't remember exactly the statistics, but most of
alcohol consumption.
That's right. Most of us are working, 50 plus hours a week, and for a knock-on effect in terms of our physical, actual well-being, which it obviously contributes to anxiety and depression.
Yep.
And so there is another question here around how do we avoid being our own worst critic?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think we're all on a journey together in that. Yeah, because we do exist within a culture that expects us to always be performing and demonstrating that we are succeeding and achieving. It's all very external, and we are so hard on ourselves. We are always criticizing ourselves. And again, the act of slowing down and looking internally and going, why do I think that about myself? Where did that come from? Is that something I need to think? Where did I learn that from? Where is that being reinforced? Because I've been doing some form of self-awareness work for 10 years, and I can assure you I still can hear this voice in my head going, not enough, not good enough. And it's like, but why?
A lot of the techniques and ideas that you've shared so far, Sarah, have been around from the context of a teacher. But there's a question here from an RTLB who spends a lot of time moving between schools. Are these universal ideas that would apply to anyone working in education? Or if they aren't, do you have any kind of specific people that are specific advice for people working in education that aren't teachers?
Well, it's interesting because when I was doing the literature review and looking at the emotional labour and burnout research, a lot of it I borrowed from nurses and social workers. So there was a study done particularly specifically on nurses because they have interpersonal stressors, as in they need to manage the negative emotions of clients. Teachers do that. Yeah. So I would say people who are in jobs that require emotional labor, so interacting with and managing the emotions of the people we work with, this is universal to that. Yeah. The experience will be different. For example, I'm Pākehā, so I have my experience, but that will be different for Māori, Pacifica, and other people of colour. They will have another layer that needs to be considered, and that's an important conversation that needs to be had about when you enter into a room, why are you having to manage your emotions, and how is that needing to be done? Across the board, yes, this emotional labour stuff is relevant for all people in professions that are people facing.
So I've got one last question, and then we're going to bring this to a close. And I'd be interested to get a response from both of you. People listening, if they're anything like me, a lot of what you've both discussed really resonates to my experience. So if they want to do something in the short term around starting a conversation in their schools around what first steps might look like, what advice would you give?
Even from this conversation now, I am thinking about what I'm going to do with my team next, and what I'm going to go and say to my BT when we have our BT meeting in the morning. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take her a hot chocolate because she doesn't drink coffee, and I'm going to tell her that she is enough. So go to someone tomorrow morning. Go to the person who teaches next to you, and tell them that they are enough, and then start saying no. Is the first thing, and asking why. I think if we are teachers are completely overburdened with extra things, we are like magpies. We see something nice and bright and shiny, and we're like, oh yes, let's learn how to do that. Let's just know our pedagogical knowledge is enough and skills. I'm not saying we don't need to upskill, but at the moment, let's just be still. Let's try and influence one another in a positive way, and tell each other that we're actually enough. And I'm going to go and do that to everyone that I see tomorrow at my school. You've totally influenced me, Sarah, and I love it. So I think that's where I'm going to start. And I think everyone in this conversation could just imagine if someone came up to you tomorrow morning, Liam, and said, "You're enough, you're amazing," and that's it, and just walked away. Imagine that, spray and walk away like you do with kids, and you'll be like, wow, what an awesome way to start my Friday. And keep doing it, I guess.
That's right. That would put a smile on my face, and then I'd go and get on with the day.
And then you check in on them next week.
What are your thoughts, Sarah? How do you start and get the ball rolling?
With this, yeah. What I did at the start of our session together, I acknowledged how I felt. What was that I needed? I was nervous. And it's okay for me to say, hey, I'm feeling nervous and I need to take a moment to breathe. And that's how I'm feeling. Because I can't, we have this question of, are you okay? Is everything okay? How can I help you? But I don't know how to answer that yet until I take a moment to check in with myself and go, and I'm sorry, I did get distracted, but somebody said, the children need to slow down so we don't need to rush, which is easier said than done. It really is. Yeah. And it's like at our do I really need to do that right now? What can I give myself permission to not do right now? Yeah, I need to rush you to the library. It's library time and we have to be on time. It's okay though, because if I stress myself out and get tight, the kids are going to respond to that tightness. And then they're all going to like be fizzing because they're just responding. Yeah, Kahli, you know, they're the lightning rod. It's that Goethe quote, I am the deciding factor in the classroom. I decide the weather. We are the weather setter. So
I like that. So now I've got this picture of the weather setter and the energy bar at the top, like in my head, and I'm gonna put like my energy bar at the top of my classroom tomorrow, and I'm gonna actually rate myself into where I am and get my kids to rate me. You know, like where do you think my energy levels are? Where are your energy levels? You know, how are you actually feeling?
Yeah,
I mean, it's all part of changing that culture, right? And if I'm doing that, hopefully others will see it, and then that becomes a bigger change within my school, and then hopefully, you know, down the road, Liam, we can get that systemic change that we need, and that resourcing and all of that cool stuff that I know that we're all pushing for, and that we all know that we need because our workload is ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm going to draw us to a close. Look, can I just say an absolute heartfelt thank you for both you, Sarah and Kahli, for what you have shared. We're just so lucky that we've got people with the insights like you've shared today within our own profession. And I'm constantly struck around the complexity of this issue, because it is about us, it is about the culture that we live within, but it's also about that systemic change. And so two plugs before I pass back to Sarah to close. The first one is a huge thank you to everybody that filled out the Wellbeing survey for last year. The next one is coming out in term 3, and it's really important that we are building these ongoing pictures over time around what those changes are looking like. So please encourage all your colleagues to get that filled in, because we benefit the more people that fill that in, the stronger the statement it makes. The second plug is for paid union meetings that are starting towards the end of term 2. These are going to be really important that we get as many people to them as possible. We're going to be discussing the recommendations from Puaotanga and really setting the direction around what our claims need to look like as we head into next year. It's going to be a hugely exciting year. We are building the foundation to actually deliver systemic funding into the primary sector, but it isn't just going to happen. It's going to require all of us to come together one-on-one, hand in hand, to actually go about convincing government to make this investment that we need in education to be able to meet the expectations that our children should have of what we're able to provide to them. To everybody out there, thank you very much for logging on at the end of the day. And your call to action tonight is to challenge yourself to say no to something.
Yes.
Sarah, can I pass over to you?
I do actually think that Kahli was going to close. So
it would be nice if you did the breath. Do you want to do the breath thing just a little bit? And do you want to do that? And I mean, I can say the critic, or you could. I don't mind. I think it would be really nice to start how we finished.
It would be my pleasure to hold some space for us to all take a deep breath together, because I think we stirred up quite a bit of exciting conversation. And then when we feel settled, I'll hand the karakia to you so you can ground your wairua with that. So if everybody listening, wherever you are, you want to shift in your chair. In fact, actually just shifting your weight from side to side. Your body is in this chair right now. Yeah, there it is, beneath you. Awesome. And just noticing, perhaps letting your shoulders slump forward, so really letting your body be like rounded and loose and heavy. And then I like to imagine it like a puppet, like Pinocchio. A piece of string is attached to the top of your head. And if you're like me and you're quite tactile, you might like to pull that imaginary string upwards towards the ceiling. And feeling how your spine, the bone in your back, gets taller and longer. Yeah. And then you can perhaps tie that string to an imaginary rafter to help you lift nice and tall. And this may sound strange, so ignore me if it doesn't work for you, but the space where the corners of your eyes meet the bridge of your nose, can you take your attention there? And maybe see if you can make that feel a little bit broader and wider and softer. Yeah. We're going to take a deep breath in, nice and slow, filling up your lungs as much as you can. And I'm going to actually invite you to let it go out of your mouth, even with a little bit of sound if you want to. Yeah, nice. And we're going to do that 2 more times together. So we're going to breathe in. When you're ready, letting it go. Great, and just 1 more.
All right, I'm going to close with our karakia now. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was amazing. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia turuki whakakahatahi ai, kia turiki whakatahia ai, haumie huie taike. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thanks.
Ka kite anō.
Ka kite.
Kite.